Zendurance Now Coaching, the relentless pursuit of excellence. Are you looking to increase your fitness level, get stronger, or reach a new goal? There are many people who share that same desire, but often life or injuries get in the way, and their progress slows or even stops. Professional coaching brings a unique element to staying focused, developing the right fitness and nutrition plan, and having a certified coach to help you stay on target and reach your goals. Zendurance Now helps you reach your goals through customized training plans, one-on-one consultation, and constant motivation. Whether you're a local or remote, we've got this. Visit www.zendurancenow.com and learn how we can help you.
G-Fit is a group-based, high-intensity circuit training led by NASM certified trainers in a pressure-free, friendly, and comfortable environment located in Tampa, Florida. Classes Monday and Wednesday, 5:45 to 6:30 p.m., and Saturday at 10 a.m. Personal training available upon request. Fees are found at www.tpamartialarts.com.
The following program is for entertainment purposes only. Though the hosts of this show are certified Ironman coaches, their attempts at long-course triathlons and endurance events should not be taken as an endorsement for you to do something stupid too. You should make your own bad decisions, then podcast about it. Now, let's start the show.
Well, we'll do this by phone if that's all right.
Well, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, whatever is most convenient for you guys.
Okay. Well, we'll have to edit this out then. Okay.
He's getting good at the editing.
You mean we're not live?
Well, we are. No, it's not live. We trim. It'll be up in a couple hours though. We don't play.
We don't play around, yeah.
No. Well, folks, after a little technical difficulty, and after me biffing up the communications the other night, if you listen to the last episode, you heard us going, "Where is he? Where is he?" That must have been my fault. But through all the trauma, we've made it through to the back of the pack, and we have found the man, the myth, the legend, the aquatic flightless bird himself, John the Penguin Bingham.
Good evening. I'm glad we finally made it work.
Wonderful. And John, I should introduce you to the other John, my co-host here.
I'm the John that's in the hot weather
evening.
still. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Good. You staying warm up there?
I'm sorry?
You staying warm up there?
No, absolutely not. I've been traveling most of the last 5 weeks and came home from Las Vegas on Monday to, I think it was about 12 degrees when I got home.
Yeah.
I'm a Chicago native, but that still seems cold.
We have a mantra on this show. We have a few mantras on this show, but one of them that starts about this time of year. I live in Pennsylvania, and John lives in Florida. So whenever we talk about the weather, we just say, "I hate you, John."
This is prime I hate.
Well, I hate you, John. There you go.
Now I feel special. I'm hated by the penguin. That's there
important. You go.
That's very important.
You would think the penguin could handle the cold weather, though, right?
I would think.
So we are thrilled to have you on the show tonight. As I said in
my pleasure.
In my messages, you, sir, represent why we're here. And in a very direct way, really why we're running. And I know you've heard that from countless people at expos and book signings, but we're gonna tell you one more time. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate hearing that. And I think what probably gets lost in most of the PR stuff, since running is kind of what I got known for, I actually started this part of my life as a multi-sport athlete. The first thing I ever did was a duathlon. I didn't have any idea what that was. And then I did an Olympic distance triathlon as the next thing I did. So I it wasn't that I got caught up in running and just thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I liked the idea of the cross training, and until I realized how much of my life it took to suck at 3 sports, I really was having a great time. I did 2 half Ironman triathlons, tons of Olympic and sprints. So, I'm coming to this from that kind of a background. Running turned out to be a way I earned a living, but my passion was really to have the variety of the experience that you get from the multi-sport stuff.
Yeah, I enjoyed that story actually in the Accidental Athlete book of the duathlon. And when we got you booked, I went back and reread it actually, and I love that story about how you felt like it would be no problem, and you end up being the last 2 across the finish line with the ambulance right behind you, and
well, the part about doing the first 5K in 45 minutes, if you can imagine, a sort of any duathlon crowd, especially that's back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then getting to the transition area, and the only 2 bicycles in the transition area were mine and my buddies. So, the advantage was we didn't have to scour through a bunch of bikes to find ours.
Yes. Well, I've been there. I've been there many times. You come in after the bike, and you go, and every bike is there. The only spot open is where mine goes, and everybody's already running.
Exactly.
And say, "Oh God."
Yeah, I'm always like, I'll find it. Don't worry, I'll find it after this.
Exactly.
The swim.
But and just the fact that you hit something like that, and you still put on the shoes and go and start that run again. So
before you became the writer that we all know, who was out there encouraging you to show up, even if you're not, the fastest one, or even staying with the pack? As you mentioned, it's a different world between multi-sport and running. I'm new to it in the last 4 years, and it seems to me that there's tolerance for us slow people in both places, but it plays out differently. What did that look like before you really became the voice of the back of the pack movement?
Well, that's a really good question. I came into it as, an overweight smoker, drinker, and very inactive, and then started doing a little bit of bicycling, a little bit of walking, and then mixing in some running. And the truth is, there really wasn't anybody out there advocating for those of us who didn't have the innate talent and had lived but certainly a less than an athletic lifestyle to try to do something. I was coming out of a motorsports background, so the idea of competition for me, I liked that idea, but nobody was saying, hey, take a shot at it. I was very lucky. I had a good friend, colleague of mine, Lee Alsbrook, who introduced me to first the duathlon and then the triathlon. And he was the sort of quintessential back of the packer. So he made it okay for me to just hang out with him. The first triathlon I did, the sprint distance, I'm swimming out there and swimming. And I just think I'm pounding the swim, and I look up and he's floating on his back. It's just, paddling with his hands a little bit. So he was really the only one. There wasn't any formal kind of codified back of the pack at that point. In fact, I think it was quite the opposite. It was like, well, why are you here?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And I just, oh my gosh, I have so many questions, John. When did you start writing for Runner's World?
The first Runner's World column was published in May of 1996, and the phrase that I had become best known for, the miracle isn't that I finished, the miracle is that I had the courage to start, came from a half Ironman in Panama City, Florida. We were coming back in a van. I was in the back seat, and it took me 7 hours and 40 minutes to do a half iron. As you can imagine, there weren't very many people behind me, and as I reflected on that, I got to tell you the whole story because I jumped into the Gulf of Mexico and I'm out there again, and I really just think I'm hammering it like Mark Allen in those days. And then a school of fish went below me, and I looked. Next thing I know, I'm sort of snorkeling or I'm just looking at the fish, having a great. And they actually tapped me on the shoulder and said, sir, you have to kind of keep going. And I said, yeah, but I've never seen fish like that. I'm from Illinois, So I made my way through the swim, got through whatever that took, got through the bike ride. That all went fine because I like bicycling. Got out there on the run, and then everything really went fine. It's just that, as you can imagine, by the time I got to the finish line, 7 hours and 40 minutes later, basically everybody's gone home. So as I was coming back from that, I did in the van. I thought, for someone like me, the miracle isn't that I finished. I was, I prepared. I did all the swim workouts, and I did everything I could to start. To finish. But the idea that someone like me would line up with a bunch of guys in Speedos, it was just shocking.
Yeah.
That phrase, "courage to start," then became a title of your book.
It did, and I think it reflects, and apparently it has resonated with a lot of people that really is what it's about. It's about having that courage to start and knowing going in that you're never going to be very good.
Right. Well, that was the first book that I picked up after the cancer that I had was clear. And I gained all the weight. I was over 300 pounds, and going and trying to find some inspiration. The first book I picked up was The Courage to Start, and because I like the title.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
And
I know that the book has, and it's not. There's no ego involved in this. It's been a great gift to me to talk to folks like you and others that something in that helped them do what they wanted to do. It gave them permission, and maybe it gave you permission to try to do something that maybe otherwise you wouldn't have tried. So that's great, and congratulations to you.
Right, and we joked about it the other night when we were talking that I've actually bought that book 3 times because I keep losing them, and I bought it again. I bought it again, so I'm keeping you in business. I actually bought it again just about 6 months ago. I needed it again.
Oh, well, thank you.
Because I've had all these starts and stops, and luckily, I did come from a kind of an athletic background growing up, and I didn't really become sedentary and overweight until the cancer hit me. And
right,
and not to get into that, but you start using that caused the weight gain, but then I started using that as an excuse to not try anything, and so
sure, of course. Well, yeah, absolutely.
And I know I know you're very involved in team and training, and that's how I got into triathlons. Actually, was through team and training, and
that's even better. I've been with team now for I think about 15 or 16 years, and the short story is my high school girlfriend, the first woman I ever thought I would marry and spend my life with, in 1970 was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease, and of course, as you know, back in 1970 that was a death sentence. I lost me, and so this is kind of my way of giving back to people who are trying to prevent that sort of sadness from coming into other people's lives. Yeah. So, that is also a gift to me.
And charity racing is such a big thing today, especially among those of us who aren't going for BQs. Not the fast runners don't do charity too, but a lot of people get motivated, to do those charity connections. Unlike John, my partner here, I did not have an athletic youth. I was in the band. So when I read your books and you talked about...
You're a band guy.
I'm a band guy.
There you go.
I was drum major 2 years.
Oh, well, now, wait a minute. You were really a good band guy then.
Yeah, I was president of the band, so I was head geek.
Oh!
Yeah, I still have my alto
Don't tell me you played flute. Do not tell me you played flute.
No, I played...
this conversation.
No, listen. You'll love it. You'll love this. You're one of the few people who can appreciate this. So I played alto sax mostly, and I still have it. My daughter's probably going to play it next year. I played sousaphone for a year terribly in the marching band. And then I was a decent enough singer to make it to regional chorus. One shot shy of states at a districts, regionals. But for band, there were just too many alto sax players, and I wasn't top notch. I was solid, but so my band director said, look, I'm going to get you to districts. What we're going to do is we're going to put you on bassoon. I said, really? Double reed? He said, we're going to give you a synthetic reed. We're going to put you on bassoon, and there's 4 spots. There's 4 spots for districts. 5 of us auditioned. The scores went 192, 191, 175, then 92, 90. So there was me and one other terrible bassoon player that basically they flipped a coin, and I won the toss.
There you go.
Doesn't matter.
So I've been back in the pack. I was thinking about it. I've been the back of the pack at district band.
There you go.
The last guy.
I mean, it's a fun story, and I mean, and believe me, I do understand because I was in that business for a long time. But the truth of the matter is, you were a back of the pack bassoon player, but you showed up, and that's what counts, And I mean, in terms of alto sax, there really are plenty of alto sax players, probably as many alto sax players as the world needs for the next 300 or 400 years.
I have to say that I was also in the band, but I was in the cool section. You know what the cool section of the band is, right?
Is that where the guys who hang around with musicians
the
go?
Drummers.
The drummers.
The drummers, yeah. Well, no. See, I was a bass trombone player, so I'm low brass, so I'm right near that percussion section. So
That's
I
right.
was, yeah.
Hey, you know what they
were my drinking buddies.
You know what they call a drummer who breaks up with his girlfriend? Homeless.
No.
That's pretty true.
Well, what blew my mind reading your story was that you were a trombone player and a smoker. I mean, that
yeah.
How do you pull that off?
Well, look, I mean, this, again, you're talking about a long time ago. I mean, I graduated from college in 1970, and I was, at that point, I'd already been, I'd had the beginnings of a career. I went into the Army band right out of graduate school. And in those days, smoking was fairly common. I mean, everybody smoked. It wasn't like it was now. We just thought it was absolutely the coolest thing ever. Mm. And eventually I ended up at the National Theater in Washington, D.C., and, we'd stand backstage outside before the shows, and we'd all smoke, and then we'd go play the first act, and we'd come back outside at intermission. We'd all smoke, and then you get home and you have a beer or 12 and then another half a pack of cigarettes. So I think it was culturally not as frowned upon then as it is now. I can remember I was an administrator at the University of Illinois here in Champaign, down there in Champaign. I used to smoke in my office. Mm-hmm. Kids would come in, hey, you'd like to be a clarinet major? Oh, yeah, sure, have a seat. Let me talk to you about it. But now I look back at that and I think, God, what was I thinking?
I'm just thinking of the lung capacity. I'm just thinking of the breath support to play trombone. Means you've built quite a set of lungs in the meantime, so you were ready for running. Well,
I was playing bass trombone and tuba, so I was probably sort of cleaning things out. Not like a bassoon player and oboe player where everything's choked up and it just shrinks their brain.
Yeah, I played a very brief time.
That was actually a good thing for you. Synthetic bassoon, oh my God.
Yeah.
Your sound must have been absolutely glorious.
Oh, it was horrifying. It was It was quacky. But see, the best part of that was I got to sit because of the way that the band was seated, circle, half circle. I was right across from the first chair oboe player, and she was adorable. And she was she was also a drum major in the marching band that I knew from like band competitions. So I like to pass the notes to her. But gosh, yes, I'm going back a few years now. So, how did the column evolve into a career?
The column evolved into a career in probably the way that almost no one can really quite comprehend. Again, now you got to go back. This is the early to mid '90s, and the internet was just sort of getting started. I mean, I was an academic administrator, so we had the EDU domains and things like that, and there was an email distribution list that was called the Dead Runner Society. And in those days, it was a very secret group. You had to be invited into it. And, I mean, because it was just government types and academics. And somehow I can't even know how I managed to get invited into this. And it was this, again, an email distribution list. So people would go out and do their runs, and I ran 4 miles today. I was awful. I sucked. And the next, I ran 3 miles today. It was awful. It sucked. And I would put on there, I ran 3 miles today. It was absolutely fabulous. I had the best time ever. It took me 45 minutes, and people thought, well, who is this guy? A woman, Marlene Simmons, who wrote for the L.A. Times and the station in Washington, D.C., that had done some freelance work for Runner's World, knew Andy Burfoot. George Sheehan had died about a year earlier, and they were running his columns posthumously. And she sent a bunch of these emails to Andy Burfoot, editor of Runner's World. And for some reason, it caught Andy's eye. Andy called me at Middle Tennessee State and invited me to do 8 columns. And I think they were getting a little pressure. The second running boom was sort of beginning to percolate at that point. And he asked me if I could do 8 columns. And being an old freelance musician, I said, of course I can. I had no idea what that meant, but I said, sure. And so I did the 8 columns, and I did them all in 1 week because I thought that's what you had to do. Sent them to him, and I thought, well, I'll never hear from them again. And then he called me in September of that year of 1996 and said, hey, we need 12 more. And why? Well, we're going to run the columns again in 1997. So that's how it started. One freak phone call. If he had never called, or if Marlene had never shown him those things, I would probably be a band director somewhere at this point.
It's amazing how those twists of fate just, set us on a course.
Well, and the backstory on that, or the sort of end of that story, is that a friend of mine had sent, if you remember Runner's World at that time, the back page used to be like readers' submissions, whatever they used to call it. Mm-hmm. And a friend of mine had sent in something that I had written, and I had gotten a letter virtually that day that said, nobody wants to read about a former fat guy, smoker, drinker who runs slowly. Nobody. This is the same time that Amby's hiring me to do columns for Runner's World. And it turns out the editor who just said no one wants to hear from you was his wife. So can you imagine that dinner table conversation?
Yeah, nice. Nice.
So fortunately for me, he was the executive editor, and he made that decision.
Well, they must have been getting feedback from people writing in saying, hey, I'm glad you have that column. I've been buying it secretly and, buying Runner's World, not feeling like there's a place for me. And here's the guy with a place for me. I mean, that had to be the feedback they started getting when nobody was expecting a column like yours.
I think you're absolutely right. And again, it's not an ego on my part at all. I think that there was a readership out there of people like me, what I've defined as the adult onset athlete, mm-hmm. who wanted to commit to running and for whom reading an article every month on how to run your fastest 5K just wasn't all that interesting. And I mean, Sheehan. He was absolutely phenomenal, but he represented that era that he was in, where galvanizing your spirit and the effort, and coming across the finish line and throwing up and sliding through your vomit, and that was kind of where everybody was in those days. So I think it was the voice. It was so contradictory to most of the stuff that was in that magazine that it sort of stuck out like a sore thumb. And you're right, and I know that now from talking to these folks, they began to get some feedback from what turned out to be the second running boom saying, hey, this guy's talking to me, or this guy's telling my story, or this guy, something about what he's saying really means something to me, and turned into a 14-year career.
And so you start going to races as a special guest. You're speaking at dinners and things, and expos, and the boom is happening. Then there's the blowback. Talk about that if you can. I'm sure you've talked about it many times. Wasn't it even your name might have even been in the title of the article? The John Bingham ruined running guy.
They did a piece here. Yeah. And again, it's a longer. I mean, the guy, he's here in Chicago, and it's a Chicago Reader. Yeah, headline, front page, the man who ruined running. And then here's my face on the cover of this magazine. And I had friends that, they would have them at Starbucks, and they said, God, I walked in to get a cup of coffee today, and I see 100 of your faces staring at me. That was, I mean, if you read the piece, eventually he kind of, backed away from that. But the one that got the most controversy started, and I wish I could remember the author's name, but he wrote for the New York Times, and he was a friend of Amby's and knew their old Runner's World crowd. And so they wanted to do some little feature piece. This is probably 4 or 5 years into the column. And I said, fine. And he wanted a photograph, and then it was fine. So I had a T-shirt made up that said, I'm slow, I know, get over it. Mm-hmm. And that's the picture that they put with his piece about the Penguin. Well, I mean, the New York Times comments and editorial page, they just lit up. Who is this guy? How can he talk about it? Doesn't he understand? And it was the greatest thing that could have ever happened because it was nothing like controversy. And suddenly people began to defend what became the sort of Penguin ethos, which is that, hey, wait a minute, I'm slow, I know, get over it. There's no reason why I can't have the same experience, the same emotional experience, the same spiritual experience, finishing a 5-hour marathon that you can finishing a 2-hour and 30-minute marathon. Stop it. And that was really the big shift, I think, when there were more voices than just mine saying, wait a minute, my life changed when I came across that finish line. My life changed when I started training for an Ironman. My life changed. And then there was this chorus. It wasn't just some goofball talking about this. It was, in fact, a movement.
I have a theory, a thesis that's kind of what we've said on and John I know agrees here. We've talked about it on the show, and I have an article about it on beginnertriathlete.com. I call it the Jan Brady syndrome. I'm really interested in your take on it. And here's the thesis, that actual elite fast runners never look down on the back of the pack. It's always the guys in the middle who are frustrated that they're not faster. So it's amazing when people write an article saying, well, unless you can do a marathon in X amount of time, you're not really running. Isn't it amazing how that X time is always right around their time? And it's those are the people who give you crap. They're not elites, they're not on the podium, but they're the ones who are more frustrated, and so they got to have somebody to crap on, and so it's the fat and the slow in the back. Has that
absolutely
been? Yeah.
You are spot on the money. My good buddy Bart Yasso, all the years that we worked together at Runner's World, he called them the 2:30 marathoners. Now, I was in the music business for a long time. These are the guys that are chronically playing second chair. They're never going to be the lead trumpet player. They're never going to be first oboe. They're never going to be, they're never going to make it. I mean, it's a 2:30 marathoner. They know they can't crack into that. And so they're angry. They're angry and they're frustrated and they don't have the talent or the drive or whatever it is. And so they're annoyed at anybody else who's trying. And so, yes, but I think that that's true. At least my experience has been, certainly in higher education, it's the people who wanted to get the jobs at Harvard or Yale, and then they end up stuck in their minds at Penn State. Well, Penn State's a great school, but if in your mind, if you're not at Harvard or Yale, you're nothing. And they're the ones that walk around grumpy at faculty meetings. So, yeah, I think you're I don't know the Jan Brady reference, but, that's exactly who's out there criticizing. It's not the elites. I'm on the stage with the elites almost every weekend.
Right.
And 201. Yeah. This generation of elites, last generation, the Frank Shorter generation, they admire what we're doing because they know that in some ways it's much more difficult for us because we don't probably have that innate talent.
The Jan Brady reference is basically middle child syndrome. That
I see. Okay.
Everybody loved Marcia. She was first at everything, and Cindy was the adorable baby everybody fussed over, but nobody paid any attention to poor Jan. And that's why I said I can kind of understand to a point. Like if you get the awards at the front, you're fast, and now because of people like yourself, we have appreciation for us back at Packers. In a lot of races, they really celebrate that last person. I've been that last person at a number of races. As I say, I am on first name basis with our local club sweeper at trail runs. But so everybody fusses for us. But if you're finishing, a 3.5 hour marathon, that's pretty darn good compared to the population. But nobody fusses the way they do over the wow, I'm glad you got out there and tried. I think that's what some of the blowback has been about.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that there's probably a book out there somewhere, The Loneliness of the 245 Marathoner. Because if you stood as many finish lines as I had, you know that, I mean, the beginning, the early parts of it, they're all screaming and hollering, and even probably through the first 10 or 20, the crowd is thin, but they're paying attention. But by the time you get to those guys that are running 240, 245, 250, nobody cares, because the only people gathering at the fence are waiting for their brother-in-law or sister or husband, wife, or daughter, whatever that is, and they could care less. And so really for about an hour and a half or 2 hours until we get closer to that 4-hour marathon mark, nobody's paying attention. And I think you're absolutely right. These people must be very frustrating unless they're the kind of person that can understand that doing their best is good enough.
I got one more question. I'm going to throw it over to John for a few more questions, and I've got one. And that's this. So I had people listen to the show know I love to get books signed if I can meet the authors. I have a pretty good, and I was going to meet you to get a book signed, and I missed it, and I'll tell you what it was. My first half marathon was at Disney World 2011. No, 2012. And
2012, right.
Yeah, 2012. It was December 1st, 2010, I woke up and set the goal. Like an alcoholic in recovery, I can tell you the date, you know? It was, actually, it was a big deal. Actually, what happened was I said to my wife, I'm going to be 40 in 15 months. I was born on leap year. So I was like, I need something to do before I turn 40. Maybe I should bench press a certain amount. She's like, nah, forget that. How about the Disney World Half Marathon? And we had just come back from Disney with our kids, and I was just exploding with energy from it. And I was like, there's half marathons? 13 miles? I got 13 months till then? You're on. Yeah. I didn't even think about it. And then I found your book and everything. Well, you were at the expo at that one, as you've been at many. And I was all excited to go to your talk and then, get a picture and get my book signed. Problem was, our kids were signed up for the kids runs. My little guy did the 200-meter dash, and my daughter did the Mickey Mile. And I was like, well, not even a choice, you know? You go where the kids are. So maybe another time. And so I missed my opportunity to shake your hand, but I'm so glad we get to talk to you now. What's that been like, that whole big giant expo scene that you've been doing the rock and roll races? We just mentioned one tonight. I'm doing DC half next year. They went on sale today, so everybody's signing up right now. John's talking about Savannah. We know your friend Ann Wessling. I met her at a Try Rock event. And
Annie and I were just announcing together at Vegas this past weekend. She's the best there is. She's just the best.
That's another reason for me to do another rock and roll event, just to see Ann.
Yeah, we should get her back on the show again too.
Call ahead though. Talk to Annie, because I'm not. She's only on so many events.
Right.
So much else going on in her life. Vegas is obviously one of her big ones. I think she does San Diego every year, because that's always a big event.
Well, I was so impressed.
You asked about.
She remembered me from the previous year at the Try Rock. That's what blew my mind. She remembered me from Try Rock the year before, and so, we're on Facebook to get, friends now, and that's kind of neat. But those big events, you were about to say.
Well, just at the expos, there's been a transition in it, and it's been a healthy transition for me, and one that I've really enjoyed. The mid-'90s, all this starts at Runner's World, and now we're sort of into the early 2000s, and there was a novelty to this and the Back of the Pack and the Penguin and all of that. And in fact, at Disney, I can remember one year, we probably had 300 or 400 people out there all, let's meet the Penguin. Mm-hmm. And I used to bring my mom with me to the expos, and we'd sell T-shirts and mugs and books, and we would just have a grand time. But how can I say this in a way that as I became more accepted by the running community, as I became less of the court jester, and people understood that I was serious about the sport, I love the sport, I love the people in the sport, but I like the front of the pack people, middle of the pack people, back of the pack. I wasn't a guy who was telling everybody just run slow, and that's what you should do. I got to start doing interviews. I got to be actually a moderator. And so that has led to this transition from being up there by myself talking about, my silliness, which is fine, and I still do some of that, to actually getting to sit on stage with Frank Shorter, with Khalid Kanucci, with Steve Jones. This weekend I did 2 sessions with Meb. I mean, it's just because I'm such a huge fan. I think people pick up on that, and I'm able to then somehow act as a translator between the elite state of mind and what people think the elite state of mind is. So that's been the part about this that has been the most fun, and to be honest, the part I'm going to miss the most.
I think that's kind of the ethos that's behind this podcast. John and I are back-at-pack guys, and we're just blown away that we got Mark Allen a couple weeks ago, and we've talked to some other people who are pretty fast. And isn't that the great thing about the endurance sports world, that you can be on stage with Meb, and yet in football, the guy who is great, a fantasy football winner does not necessarily get to hang out with Super Bowl ring bearers. You know, it's the unique thing about endurance sports that at the front, well, one of your quotes that we like, and then John, pull up some of those quotes you wanted to talk about. That at the back, there's just as many races at the back of the pack as there are at the front, and people don't think about that. And you wrote about that extensively. We've had that experience. Our friend Megan, who listens to the show, and I actually met up with at a race, she was sprinting to make sure she beat the one guy ahead of her before the finishing chute. He was a wheelchair athlete, and she said, I feel like I'd be disrespecting him by not trying to beat him, and consider him a real competitor. That whole experience has been amazing. I do say that I wish people would not just in a wave start. So there's faster people behind me in a wave start. Don't just pass the fat guy and then start your walk break. Like, we know where's your mailbox.
It's our favorite thing. Yes.
I know I'm your next light pole, your next mailbox stop. When you do that,
Frank Shorter is the one that said that. There are gold medal moments going on through the entire pack.
Mm-hmm.
Now you'll understand this better than most. You'd be there. You're a mile from the end of the run on a half iron or triathlon or whatever it is, and you can hear the steps coming up behind you. And I have looked over my shoulder and said, "Please don't be in my age group, because then I'm going to have to race you. Please don't be in my age group." And if it's not, fine. Or if it's a woman anywhere near my age or man anywhere near, then I'm going to race them. I mean, it is a battle to the death. I don't want some, in those days when I was in my 50s, I didn't want some 70-year-old going by me like I was standing still. And now that I'm in my mid-60s, I guess I don't want some 80-year-old. I must tell you, though, with the London Marathon one year, and I don't tell this story very often. I was out there with a pace group for Runners World UK, and at the time, Sanjay Singh, I think is how you pronounce his last name, an Indian gentleman who started running marathons when he was 81 years old. He was, at that time, 90 years old. And I was out there pacing, and some friends had met me at about mile 20 with chocolates and coffee. Well, I mean, chocolates and coffee at mile 20. This 90-year-old gentleman goes floating past, and I looked up, and for an instant I thought, I really shouldn't allow myself to be beat by a 90-year-old. Then I thought, but the coffee and chocolates are so good. And I just sat there and ate and let him go. So, it's all about perspective, I guess.
Sure.
That's right.
John, I've been talking a lot.
Yes.
What you got?
Well,
other John.
Other John.
Big John, Florida John.
Well, you kind of touched on it. I think there's a huge misconception that among some people that because we are slow and because we are the back of the pack that we don't care about the sport, and that we don't take it seriously. Let's put it that way. And I think that's changing, because they're seeing, even with our names, I think, when you first came out, the moniker, the Penguin, was seen as almost like you're making fun of yourself, which you are in a way, I guess. But, on my side is Fat Slow Triathlete, and Andy's is Doughboy Ironman. So I've had to explain on numerous occasions that by calling myself the Fat Slow Triathlete, it wasn't because I was making fun of myself or disparaging myself. It was because I wanted to be accessible to people that were trying to do it as well and were worried that they couldn't do it. So if they, and I've been told that a few times that they found my blog and they found the podcast because they went on Google and put in fat, slow triathlete,
right.
to find it. So I think, the whole idea, one of your quotes, and Andy just said, I pulled up, I'm a big quotes guy. I like quotes. And the one that always struck me from you was, and I don't want to throw your words back at you, but it's the one that goes, I also discovered that some of the hardest fought battles are not those in the front of the field. They are being fought in the back of the pack by those of us not with nothing at stake but our pride. And I have to reread that every once in a while because I get caught up in the, I finished last again, and you get discouraged, and you've been doing this 4 years, you should be faster, but you're really only out there against yourself. And sometimes you need.
I was asked. You're right. I was asked this weekend. I did some TV stuff ahead of the Vegas race about what the biggest challenges are to someone like me starting later in life. And my answer is the shoulds. You got to eliminate the shoulds from your life. You just have to. That I should be able to run faster. I should be able to run farther. I should be able to do this. I should be able to do that. No, you shouldn't. No, probably not only you shouldn't, but you can't. And somebody else just made it's one of the greatest things ever when people make posters out of something. Mm-hmm. And somebody made a poster that's something that I had written that said, once I realized that the body I had was the body I was going to have to train, or something like that. Mm-hmm. Can't remember exactly the quote, but that's really what it comes down to. I mean, I am not genetically gifted. I come from a very round family. I mean, if you go to my family reunions, everybody's round. There aren't very many tall, skinny people in my DNA pool. So that's just the truth of it. And so if that's the case, it doesn't mean that, as I said earlier, I can't challenge myself and I can't have a satisfaction that comes from that challenge. And that's the biggest shift that I've seen in 20 years in this business, is that understanding that we get the same feeling. We experience the same things. As you said earlier, the elites always got it, but now we're seeing some of the people in that sort of middle to the back of the pack beginning to understand that it's okay.
Right. It's another quote of yours, actually, that I had written down is, do not be afraid to fail. Be afraid to accept that who you are right now is all you're ever going to be. And that's exactly one that I've actually had written down in a couple of books because that's one of my favorites as well. And
thank you.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to, is that when you have to look in the mirror and say, okay, this is who I am right now. But I can be better than this, and that takes some remembering. You have to remind yourself of that sometimes. And Andy's heard me, get discouraged and say, I invited this. This just happened actually, and Dave will hear this and chuckle because he knows I'm talking about him. But a guy I met through the blog that Googled me and found me through the blog, and actually was a local guy, and went out and did a couple of triathlons, and we did, I think, his second or third one ever. We were in the same one, and he beat the crap out of me. And he's built just like I am. And that was discouraging. I got discouraged. But I have to say that, I dealt with some stuff this year, and that I'm going to be better, and I'll be better next year, and I've been better than I am this year. So, sometimes you have to Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I guess the counsel I would give you as someone who's now getting close to turning 66 is that the only word I object to in everything that you're saying is the word better. Yeah. You could be different than you are. I mean, you could be different than you are tomorrow. You can be different than you are in 6 months. You can be different than you are a year from now. And whether you end up defining that as better or not is up to you. I mean, what does that mean? You're going to be faster? Well, then, okay, if being faster is better, then you're going to be better. But you're certainly going to be different. And so that's all I concentrate on right now, is I know that I'm changing. I know that I'm going to be different tomorrow than I was today, and I was different yesterday. Some days that's better. Some days that's worse. As the aging process really begins to sink in. I certainly know that for me, there's no more PRs out there. Now, Frank Shorter gave me a great idea. He said, now that I have a Medicare card, he said that you can start setting your Medicare PR.
Yeah, start over.
So I think. Well, I went through that. I had, sort of early PRs. Because, if you start late in life, everything's a PR for a while. And then I changed it to modern era. I thought, okay, now I'm going to go after modern era PRs, whatever that means. And then Frank said, no, now you got your Medicare card. Now you're going after Medicare PRs.
That's good.
And with the retirement coming up here at the end of December, I'm finally going to have a chance to get back into, a regular training routine. So I'm actually looking forward to these Medicare PRs, but they won't be better than I've ever been, but they're certainly going to be different.
Well, and you're touching on something that really gets at the core of what endurance sports does for so many people, and that is give yourself permission to change in life. And to for me, I knew I was bad at it from the outset. And I was a person who always did things that came naturally to me. And now that I'm a father, I'm trying to counsel I'm looking at my kids who are very bright and very gifted in many ways, but I'm watching them go through the same tendency of they gravitate to that which they know they'll already do well, and they give up easily on things that are more of a challenge. And I'm like, well, I know where they get that. They get that from me. And so I'm trying to model being able to try things you're not going to be good at. And boy, triathlon is certainly one of them, and running. And it's amazing the changes I've been through in my personality since December 1st, 2010. Have you seen that? I mean, I'm sure there's people that come up to you and tell you at these expos, since I started running, I got a better job now, or I do this now, or I tried something else. Is that a common experience for you?
Well, yeah, because one, you see it in their eyes, and I'm sure if I was sitting Skyping with you, I could see it in your eyes too. You believe something about yourself up until the point that you stopped believing it, and now you believe something different, and that's, I think, what you're describing. People who, they get out of bad relationships, or they get out of bad jobs, or they start a business of their own, or they start a blog, or they start whatever it is, a podcast. And all of this comes from the recognition that, you got to get up and take a shot at it. It comes right back to that whole business of the courage to start. And that's, if you can get past that, if you can figure out how to get the courage to start, the rest of it will find you. It really will find you. The joy in it will find you. For some people, the money in it will find you, but the satisfaction is surely going to find you. And let me finish that thought, which is that now, as a grandparent, I think one of the most important things you can do, and you already sounds like you're doing it, is involve your children. In my case, I involve my grandchildren in things they suck at, because they're going to suck at a lot more stuff. I mean, otherwise, you're absolutely right. They're going to gravitate only to the things that they do well, and then eventually, if they're not as talented as they think they are, now where are they? They haven't experienced a bunch of things, and they haven't discovered that, wait a minute, I wasn't very good at this, but now I'm getting better at this, so maybe there's a message in them too. So, yeah, I think that's really, really important.
I got one more question, and John has the ultimate question. Mm-hmm. Please tell me by now, I'm sure somebody's asked you this down the line a million times, have you seen Fight Club?
Have I seen the movie Fight Club with Edward Norton?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
And you know why? Do you know why I'm asking you particularly if you've seen
No
Fight Club?
idea.
Because when he goes to his cave in the guided meditation, his spirit animal is the penguin.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
He's going to have to rewatch it.
Now I'm going to have to rent it.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go on Netflix now. Get that thing.
You go to your cave. When he goes to his cave for his guided meditation at one of those support groups he goes to, it's a penguin. He walks up to him and even says something. So I thought the spirit animal being the penguin would connect with you. I remember when I first started writing, and getting in tri training, I decided that mine was the walrus, because
there you go.
I haven't done much lately, but the first couple of years I loved to get in the pool and swim, because I went from coughing up at 100 yards to swimming a mile in 2 months. And that was really exciting. And I did a 5K swim, and I was like all about it. But I am a terribly slow swimmer too, which is even more frustrating because being fat and overweight shouldn't be a problem for swimming. It's all technique, and I'm still just going to put the time in. There are fat marathon swimmers. But so I was like, all right, if John Bingham is the penguin, maybe for a time I'll be the walrus. I have a post or two about that, but yeah.
It's in one of the books somewhere, because I would go to the pool 3 times a week, and there were a bunch of these triathletes there, and one of them was a good buddy of mine, and I had the paddles and the fins. I mean, I had everything, and I'm working on reaching and stroking, and man, I mean, I would get on the kickboard and go backwards. I mean, it was the most bizarre thing, no matter how hard I tried. And I finally, the guy's name was Steve. I said, Steve, do you have any idea what am I doing wrong? And honest to goodness, he looked right at me and said, maybe you just suck. and you know, I mean, some people would have thought that's a cruel thing to say, but I thought, well, yeah, I mean, it was a kind of a relief to me. But, well, maybe I just suck at this. And so I can keep working on it. And I'm going to, the best I could probably hope for is to be abjectly mediocre. And for me, that would be a huge stride forward. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. I never did figure out how I still don't know how to swim very well.
It's like that's in Shawshank Redemption when the young guy comes in and brags about all the prisons he's been in. Yeah. And Andy Dufresne says to him, perhaps you aren't a very good thief.
Perhaps you aren't a very good thief. You should find a different vocation. I have to. No, I'm sorry. I have to share with you that you know, my good buddy Jennifer, Dr. Jennifer Coltrera, who by the way, John, she was a Woman of the Year for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society this year for down here in Central Florida. Same thing happens to her when she started swimming on the paddleboard. She would go backwards. And I remember our coach, KC, she would look at me and say, I don't understand how that's happening. How are you going backwards? Now, she's gotten a lot better since then, but I'd never seen that before either. So I'm glad she'll be glad to hear that others had that issue as well.
Oh, I did an adventure race, a 2-person adventure race, and one of the elements was a river paddle kick. But the two of us were on the same paddleboard or whatever it is we were hanging on to. And the harder I kicked, you know, the more my teammate had he finally said, will you please, for God's sake, stop kicking?
Just drag. Yeah.
He said, we'll be much faster. Yeah, if I just dragged you. In fact, if you put your feet up here, just put your head in the water and blow bubbles, we'll make better progress than having you out there thinking you're helping me. So, yep, I get it.
That's funny.
Oh, we got more questions, John?
Yeah, well, the one thing I want to ask, you know, we know you're retiring, you know, now, but what's going to come after that? Or, I mean, retiring, what does that mean? You're retiring?
Don't know. I don't know, and that's the honest answer. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that this part of my life was going to happen. Yeah. You know, I'd been a musician. Yeah. As a child, I was a musician through high school, had a scholarship to go to college as a trombone player, went right from there into the United States Army Band, went right from there into freelancing as a musician. So being a musician was kind of a natural flow of my life, and that's what I thought I would be doing. I ended up getting injured as a musician, as a trombone player, couldn't play, went back to school, got the doctorate, spent about 20 years in higher ed, and even that made sense to me because I was, you know, a music administrator, so I was around musicians. But when this happened, you know, with this hard right turn into becoming the Penguin, I didn't have any plan for it. And people would say to me, you know, back in the mid-'90s, what's your plan? What's your plan? What's your plan? You know, you got to have a plan. And I would say, I don't have a plan. And I can tell you now, again, nearly 20 years later, that no plan I ever could have come up with would have been as good as what happened. Nothing could have ever been this good. So when people say, what now? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. If it means spending time here in the house or riding motorcycles or spending time with my grandkids, you know, I'm content with that. I guess I don't want to turn out like a Godfather running around the garden and dropping dead.
Right.
You know, I think my guess is there will be opportunities. I certainly am going to miss being engaged with the people on as regular basis as I am, but I just have faith that whatever is going to come next is going to be good.
Good.
So you're not going to be the Godfather. You're going to be the Joker from Dark Knight. Do I look like the kind of a guy with a plan?
Exactly. Now, I will tell you this, though. I mean, and this may interest people like you. I did an interview with Mario Fraioli, who's one of the editors of Competitor Magazine and Competitor Online or Digital Competitor, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And he kept referring to my era, your era, in your era. And I thought, what does it mean, my era? And he described that era. I was a print journalist. I came into people's homes 12 times a year. And if you liked what I wrote in May, well, you'd sit there waiting for June. And it was a very different time. And I only had to have 12 ideas a year. Even an idiot like me can come up with 12 ideas a year. But that world has changed dramatically with all the digital, with the online, with the blogs, with the podcasts, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that the world has changed so much that there's going to be new and different voices. And frankly, I think the chances for any one person to be the Penguin again are pretty slim. I just don't think, only because it's too horizontal, and I don't mean in a negative way. I mean people's voices can be heard in a way that 20 years ago they couldn't be. So I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe I don't see myself doing podcasts. I don't see myself doing that kind of stuff because it's not in my DNA, but who knows? Maybe I'll learn how to do this. I couldn't even figure out how to Skype with you guys. That ought to tell you something right there.
We did have issues.
And I was trying. I was all set up, man. I had the light next to the desk. I mean, I had the whole deal there. I got a white T-shirt on with a black sweater. I thought this is going to look great. I can have to take my glasses off because it's reflecting on the screen. I mean, I am a preparation freak, and then I couldn't figure out how to get it hold of you guys. So there you go.
Don't sweat it. I think you're very right about that. That your voice came along at a time and in a format that lightning in a bottle as far as that goes. Like you said, the timing, and yes, now. So, but I think that also speaks volumes to how much effect you've had, in that it's now so, what am I trying to get at? It's so widespread accepted that a big event is going to have, or even a small 5K, is going to have some people that roll in at the very end that I'm not going to say we don't need you anymore, but I'm saying your work has been done. The fruits of it are out there. And you go to any event and you see that the legacy is so many people are on the same page with the ethos of the Penguin that we don't need one person to carry the mantle because so many others are. Does that make any sense?
I think it does, and I appreciate you saying that because it's nice to hear. What I would challenge you with, though, is that if we're not careful, and I see this in the articles that are coming out, I see this in the online stuff, without mentioning names, what's your ideal race weight and what's the ideal diet, and how fast should you run? You can take 3 seconds off your marathon time if you do this. We saw this happening with the shoes, the funky shoes with the toes and the feet and the minimalist movement, all of that kind of stuff. My concern is that the pendulum is going to swing back, and it's going to take guys like you and people that you can encourage to fight for the spot that we won. I think what you're describing is absolutely right. But if we get complacent, if we let people tell us that they're going to start closing marathon courses at 5.5 hours or 5 hours or whatever it is, if we don't continue to demand the right to have the experiences that we're having, I'm afraid we're going to get shut out. So that's my challenge to you guys. Keep talking. Keep your voices out there. Don't let up. Because if we do let up, that pendulum is going to swing back and we're going to get shut out again. And I'm too darn old to fight this battle now. So you young guys, get out there and get it done.
I'm not that young.
Well, then fine. Get your kids out there. Then.
Andy's the young one here.
I'm the young one. I'm 42. And
hey, that's exactly how old I was when this all started. So,
and that's why I love your phrase.
It's Kismet, buddy. It's Kismet. It's you now.
and you coined the phrase that I've borrowed many times: adult onset athlete.
Yeah, we've used that a lot.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I think we're in good. I mean, right now the stats of things out there is pretty good. I think we talked to a guest last week that had a little bit of blowback from something she said, and I think she was misunderstood because she wasn't dissing slow runners at all. But she was growing concerned that people are coming to races without much sense of etiquette, and I you know I'm a backpacker, and I've had people that were in my way because they were being doing things that she recommended. Maybe don't do that during a race, and there was a lot of conversation both ways. So I think it's an exploding movement, and yeah, there's going to be growing pains for people new to figure out what should you be doing here. But I will love the day when more people wear costumes at a triathlon. Let me just say that. Because
is it hard to swim in a tutu? I mean, I have enough trouble.
Little drag.
And a tiara. How do you keep the tiara on your head? Maybe with the, you can put it on underneath.
Fireman Rob can put on that full turnout gear for the marathon portion, right?
Yeah.
Well, John and I are going to meet for the first time face-to-face at Disney World. We've been podcasting basically because we're brothers from another mother. We're the same guy in the whole triathlon, fat, slow, back-to-pack thing. But we're going to be at Disney World together here in January, and I'll be doing costumes with the kids for the 5 and the 10K, not so much for the marathon. But we were just talking about the Rock and Roll Marathon series that you've been a part of, and I'll be doing a half, and I figured out who I'm going to dress as. Our last episode, I had an epic costume. I went 3 miles in boots I should not have worn. The Rocky Run in Philadelphia, you would have loved it. It was the first ever 5 and 10K, so Rocky-themed costumes were everywhere. How familiar are you with the Rocky franchise?
Well, only that I know that there are a bunch of movies, and I think I've probably seen one of them, and I yell Adrian every time I get hit in the face.
Then you would not likely have recommended or recognized my costume, but it involved small tidy whities and wrestler boots. So, do you still see?
You know what? It's an image I'm going to have to wash out of my brain.
Oh, yeah, brother, you got to
some floss or something.
The pictures are out there.
Don't look at the last episode.
Hey, before we all get out of here, there's every likelihood that I will be at Disney this year.
I meant to ask you that.
1993.
Great, yeah.
Disney,
we're stalking you,
bless
dude.
their hearts, they're a little bit late in making commitments to people because, I mean, they got a lot of stuff going on. So, I mean, I think they just got done with that Avengers series.
Yeah.
Race that they did last weekend, I guess. But it's certainly my expectation that I will be there. Last year, I was there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday on stage. So if you see the schedule, you see that I'm on, please try to come by, and I'll be delighted to meet you both.
Yeah.
I'm definitely bringing my book.
And I'll sign your book.
Absolutely. So do you still now? So that was my other question. I know you see a lot of costumes at the Disney races. Do you see many at Rock and Roll?
Not as many. I mean, we see some. I don't think we see the full-out costumes. I think Disney's kind of got that market cornered. What we're seeing, the demographic has certainly shifted from what we're talking about, the adult onset athlete that all started in their sort of mid-40s that are now in their mid-50s or in some cases mid-60s. We're seeing a lot of young women come into the sport, and I think it's fantastic because it's also going to bring in young men. Running the Portland Marathon a number of years ago, and there was a little girl standing on the side of the street with a sign that said, "Go, Gammy, go." And her grandmother was out there running the Portland Marathon. Now, that young girl is probably in her, mid-20s to early 30s now, and she's out there running the Rock and Roll race because for her, running is just something natural, something that, no pun intended, that runs in the family. So that's the big shift we're seeing now, that it's not, you're not a weirdo, you're not a wacko, you're not, as you said earlier, we're not breaking down doors, we're not changing the world. It is a running world now. I mean, it just is. And anybody who wants to put in the time, the effort can run. They can do triathlons or duathlons or anything else. And I think that's, if I have any legacy at all that I'm proud of, it's that. I think we did, and it's not just me certainly, but I think we did in that sort of mid-90s, we did knock on the door and break it down.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for your time this evening. Really appreciate it. It's been a dream of ours to get you on this show. I'm gonna stalk you in Disney now. I know that much. I'm signed up for Dopey.
Fantastic.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I can guarantee the first 3 days. I can't guarantee results on the fourth day. I might meet the balloon ladies.
Well,
but
the whole reason I'm doing that fourth day is because I knew you were doing the Dopey, so I'm there to get you through the fourth day.
All right, you and my sister.
That's right. That's why we're there.
I did Goofy, I think, the first year they did it, and I had a miserable half marathon on Saturday, and I had probably one of the best marathon experiences I've ever had on Sunday. So there again, my advice is get up each day and take it as a new day and see how it goes.
Right on.
All right. Hey, thank you both very, very much. I appreciate it. It was fun talking to both of you. I hope you get a chance to meet. Good luck with what you're doing and keep.
And that's the show for this week. Join us on the Facebook groups to find more insight and answers from the guys and friends. And thanks for listening to the Fat Slow Triathlete Show. Swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.
Zendurance Now Coaching, the relentless pursuit of excellence. Are you looking to increase your fitness level, get stronger, or reach a new goal? There are many people who share that same desire, but often life or injuries get in the way, and their progress slows or even stops. Professional coaching brings a unique element to staying focused, developing the right fitness and nutrition plan, and having a certified coach to help you stay on target and reach your goals. Zendurance Now helps you reach your goals through customized training plans, one-on-one consultation, and constant motivation. Whether you're a local or remote, we've got this. Visit www.zendurancenow.com and learn how we can help you.
G-Fit is a group-based, high-intensity circuit training led by NASM certified trainers in a pressure-free, friendly, and comfortable environment located in Tampa, Florida. Classes Monday and Wednesday, 5:45 to 6:30 p.m. and Saturday at 10 a.m. Personal training available upon request. Fees are found at www.tpamartialarts.com.